Hello, and welcome to Triggered Care. I'm Alex. Today I'm going to be talking about animal brain, what that means to me, and what I use it to describe. So, let's get into it. First, what is animal brain? And for me, I use this personally to describe when I am in survival mode, when that gets triggered. Usually that means a flashback is happening as well, but not necessarily. Sometimes it can just be a regular triggering where you feel on edge and very anxious with no clear memory to understand why you're feeling that way. And the 4 different reactions the animal brain has is also, it's just the same as the 4 fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or also known as friend responses. I call it animal brain just because it made sense for me through my recovery as like a shorthand for I'm entering the animal part of my brain where logic and thought process kind of goes out the window. Alright, so the first reaction, flight. What will happen if this is initiated is pretty much you need to move, you need to run, muscles are restless, and you just know that you have to move. You have to get out of whatever situation you are in. Whatever's triggering you is making you run into a different environment so you don't have to be around it. Fight. That is when the intense rage will hit you and you're ready to swing fists and you're ready to fight your way out. And the thing about all these reactions is I've experienced all of them at one point in my life, but I think for most people they tend to favor one, and I've never really favored the first 2, flight or fight, very often, because it's impossible to uphold that sort of reaction when you're living in it with no escape. Which leads us to freeze, which is my go-to PTSD response over the years. And that's when your muscles freeze up, you feel frozen in time almost, unable to talk, unable to move. A lot of people also express that they kind of left their bodies during their freezing moments, like they were looking at themselves from afar, or for me it's almost like I'm looking at my life through this tiny TV screen and I can't really do much to enter the physical realm. It's like I'm stuck in this weird dimension where I have no control over my facilities. And the last one, fawn, also known as friend, where you become very agreeable, very, very open to servitude in order to appease whoever or whatever is scaring you, initiating that survival trigger. So my experience with these 4 different reactions, I'm just going to name off the reaction and an example of what that was in my life. For a fight response, one time I was in high school and I worked every weekend. I opened at a fast food restaurant, so I didn't really get to sleep in much, and then on weekends I napped quite a bit because I was just a tired lady going to school trying to keep up on stuff. And my younger sister, the golden child, wanted her hair braided special that day for whatever reason, and I had told her that I would do it earlier in the week, but when she came to my room to be like, hey Alex, you need to braid my hair now, I had just gotten off of an 8-9 hour shift. I had homework to do later. I was exhausted. I wanted to get a nap in, so I'm like, I'm sorry. I did say that I was going to do it, you're right, but I just don't have the energy right now. I really need a nap. So she huffs off. She's all angry. She goes down the hall to the dining room to sit with my ma. And I'm trying to get to sleep, but then I can hear those 2 talking. And a lot of the talking is my little sister telling my mom lies, just straight up untruths to get me in trouble. She was also telling secrets that weren't necessarily lies, but I was very betrayed that she would even break my confidence and tell my mom about my boyfriend issues. And then it resorted to name calling, where she started calling me a bitch and all this stuff, and my mom wasn't really stopping her. She was just sitting and listening to her do this, and during this 5-10 minute talk between them, I'm getting angrier and angrier and angrier, and I can feel the heat rising up to my head, and like my ears were burning, and it was like something activated in my muscles. And I am not a very aggressive person. Even back in the day, I didn't really show my aggression that much, but in this case, it was the last straw for me that week, where I could not handle it. And before I knew it, it's when you're in that fight mode, it's not like you register anything or you're really able to control much, because it's like your brain is on a seek and destroy mission. I jump out of bed. I am running down the hall, stomping my feet, loud as poop. When I enter the dining room, I can see my little sister just staring at me wide-eyed, like, what the heck is going on? And I bring my fist back really far, because I just want to punch her lights out at this point. I just want to punch her in the face. And so I bring my fist back. My mother sees what's going on. She leaps up and puts her arms around my belly. And so when my fist comes down, my ma's lifting me in the air, so my fist just barely misses my sister's face. And I'm going in for more swings. Like, I don't stop swinging for a couple seconds, and I'm calling her every name in the book, like, oh, you're a stupid bitch. You know, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. You know, just all the anger that was flowing out of me. And then my stepdad comes up to, you know, quell everybody, and I was able to sit after that, but I was still raging. I was still so angry, and all I could see was just fantasies of me pummeling in her face. So that's an example of my fight response going haywire. Next, flight. For this one, this goes back to the first rape after high school. I was drugged, and then I was raped. And I was in this upstairs bedroom, and this guy wanted me to stick around, but whatever he had given me had kind of made me lose the ability to move my legs. So after he was done, you know, and I was allowed to move somewhat, I told him that I had to go, and I crawled my ass down those stairs, and I crawled across his floor. I could barely walk, but my brain knew that I had to get out of there. And then I sat in my car, and I remember I was slapping my legs because I had already called my friends, but nobody had answered because it was really, really early in the morning. Nobody was awake. I'd called a few of them trying to get out before the rape had even happened, but just nobody was available, and nobody was there. So after it I knew that I had to give him something in order to leave, and then after that, you know, I could crawl off without him chasing me or making it more painful. But yeah, even drugged, my brain still had the capacity to overload me with adrenaline so I could crawl away. For my freeze, well, my most recent flashback actually ignited a freeze response for me, and this was last week or earlier in this week that happened, and it was a flashback of being attacked when I was a child. And what that did was I couldn't move my muscles. And like I said earlier, it's sort of like you're looking through a little window and you can't really communicate with yourself. You can't tell yourself to get up. You can't even say anything. It's like you're trapped. Like there's this glass pane that you're behind that nobody can hear you through. And you're just stuck there. And you're just stuck there witnessing what's going on. And you're stuck there feeling what's going on, but not being able to do anything about it. So that is very, very rough. The next one, Fawn and Friend. This same rapist who drugged me and then I ran away from him, he was a co-worker. And so after a few months, I became his friend eventually. I mean, I hated him for the first 8 weeks. Afterwards, he tried apologizing the next day. And, you know, I didn't want anything to do with him. I kind of hung out with my other coworkers a lot more. But then it came to this point where I knew that I wasn't going to report it. And I knew that I had to see him every day. And so there was a part of my brain that was like, you either have to, you know, leave this environment and this situation, which you really can't do since you need this job, or just befriend him in order for work to not be terrible, because he constantly berated me with working, especially when I wasn't friendly towards him afterwards. And when I didn't like him afterwards, he would make fun of me, he would call me names. And it got to this point where I'm like, well, I'd rather be his friend if it means he's nice, or at least nicer, you know, and not as cruel, because it's survival brain. I mean, you make along how you have to. I also have been extremely friendly with my mother back in the day, and I used to make her laugh her pants off. Does that mean that those were good times necessarily? No, they were terrifying. I was making her laugh in order to not be punished, in order for her to be in a good mood. Because a good mood abuser is way nicer to be around than an abuser that's in a bad mood. Animal brain really messes you up, because it becomes a normal that you get used to, and granted, it does save you in a way. It is a tool that your baby brain uses to survive horrible, neglectful, abusive times. But then when you're an adult, you really don't want this anymore. You don't want it going off. And the thing is it goes off to false alarms all the time. All the time. I've been triggered by tone of voice. I've been triggered by pretty much everything. I talk about that in my triggered video. But just the fact that we have such a shortcut to the animal brain, I mean, it is exhausting. It leads to the panic disorder. It leads to hypervigilant problems. It leads to paranoia and all these other problems as well. And I know for me personally, whenever I have my fight animal brain triggered, I very much struggle with that, because I hate anger, and that's not a healthy viewpoint to have towards anger. I'm telling you right now, you should not hate anger. I'm working with my therapist as we speak pretty much. I'm going to be seeing her later. I work with my therapist about handling my anger, because I have too big of an aversion towards anger. So then when my fight response comes around, it's like I'm a flailing toddler, you know, for 30 seconds. And then my brain is so terrified of the anger coming out that it shuts down, and then I'll go into freeze. A lot of times these reactions kind of bleed into each other, like I mentioned in, I can't remember which sexual assault video it was, but one of them I was talking about how in the beginning of the rape I had frozen, I actually blacked out some time, and then halfway through my response switched to fight. So just knowing that these can mutate along the way, and just knowing what your preferred response is, because I know that for a long time I would be frozen, and I thought that was just a weird quirk of my personality. Like, oh, I'm just really quiet and sometimes I can't talk and it must be social anxiety and all of this and that and that and that, when, I'd be heavily hallucinating while I was frozen, or I'd be completely disconnected while I was frozen, or it'd be the TV screen where I couldn't feel anything and I couldn't connect to my body. But then back then I was so disassociated all the time that it was very normal for me to be disassociated. So that was sort of just like a mood for me where I was more quiet than normal. You might notice that if you were abused for a long time and you go through your childhood photos, that it almost looks like you're high in a way. Your eyes look like they're glazed over, even though you're sober, even though you're in middle school, you're in elementary school, you're not on drugs, you're just living life, but for whatever reason, you always have those eyes that are glazed over and kind of looking away because you're not fully grounded. Because when you grow up in an abusive household, you're rarely ever grounded. You are animal brain 24/7. So going from animal brain 24/7 to trying to cut back on that animal brain when animal brain has been there for you in a way, I mean, it's just a complicated spot to be in. I'll probably make more videos on this, later. I have so many examples for each response that I could give you. I mean, it would take me half a day just to get through first one, it feels like. And I don't fight that much. So, if you have any animal brain stories or feedback, feel free to share, like always. Discord, Reddit, Facebook, and resources all below. My brain has been a little blanky, so sorry about that. And have a good one.